Dueling last words. We each brought something not baseball related that we want to talk about at the end of the show, but we've got a whole show to do before that is highlighted by the top 10 second basemen in Major League Baseball for 2025. Guardians also signed Paul Sewald, and we have three new Hall of Famers, two first ballot and one 10th and final year. That's awesome, man. Jack, Peter, Just Baseball Show. As always, it is brought to us by the fine folks at BetMGM. Remember, folks, whatever you got to do to make sure that we populate on your feed, do it. Whether that's liking, subscribing, following, whatever you got to do, just make sure that the Just Baseball Show enters your lives again the next time we do it. Ichiro, Billy Wagner, CC Sabathia. We're going to get to that in a moment. How are you, my boy? You look jovial. You look spry.
I tweeted out when Billy Wagner made the Hall of Fame, I said the world is whole again. This is a guy who, since I think 2021, when we've been recapping the Hall of Fame stuff, we did full episodes, just strictly on why each guy should be a Hall of Famer or should not be. I have been pitching Billy Wagner every year. The greatest left-handed reliever has no business not being in the Hall of Fame, and he finally got in. Of course, Ichiro being in, CC being in makes me happy as well, but I've been fighting the Billy Wagner fight for a long time, so good that he is in. So I'm feeling great right now.
Dude, me too. And it's awesome to see Wagner get in because when you think about the relievers in baseball lore, you think about, yeah, guys obviously like Mariano Rivera and Trevor Hoffman. And you think about guys like, Dennis Eckersley and people like that, Lee Smith. Billy Wagner was up there with all of them. Seven-time All-Star. I saw this crazy nugget and I wish that I had it plucked. He had three separate seasons of 70 or more innings, 100 or more strikeouts, and a sub 2 ERA. I don't think any other reliever has ever done that.
Exactly. Like, this is the greatest left-handed reliever of all time. Now, some people point to postseason woes, right? He doesn't have a great track record, in the biggest moments, but he also doesn't have a ton of innings in the biggest moments either. And that would be the one thing that you could poke at his resume and say, hey, in that spot, you weren't the best. But every single Hall of Famer has one spot where they weren't the best. So to hold that over him didn't make a lot of sense to me. And I just don't understand what took him this long. He is one of the most effective relievers in Major League Baseball, regardless of what arm he threw with. And in terms of lefties, he's number one, had to be in the Hall of Fame.
I'm looking at relievers by Jaws score and just by who's in the Hall of Fame. And it's Mariano Rivera, Trevor Hoffman, Dennis Eckersley, Hoyt Wilhelm, Goose Gossage, and now Billy Wagner.
All
Man,
Hall of
how
Famers.
cool is that? You've got Riley Fingers in there as well. Lee Smith is in there, and Bruce Sutter is in there as well. But that's what we got, man. Billy Wagner is a Hall of Famer. And then two guys on the first ballot. CC Sabathia is in. I loved Ben Bellatti's joke today. What if he went in a Brewers jersey or in a Brewers hat? CC's Brewers tenure, I'll stand by, is the greatest deadline acquisition in the history of the MLB trade deadline. I'm not sure anything is going to come close.
He went over to Milwaukee and just won every single game, and it seemed like most of those were a complete game shutout. I mean, CC at his peak, one of the better left-handed pitchers in Major League Baseball. I will say this: I'm a Yankee fan, right? We don't win the World Series in 2009 without him. That was first of all, free agent signing frenzy by the Yankees. Remember that, few days where they got AJ Burnett, they got Mark Teixeira, and they got CC Sabathia, like all in one punch.
That was
Um,
peak evil empire. It's like, oh, okay, CC after, and I just pulled up the Brewers numbers. 17 starts, 130 and two-thirds innings in 17 starts, but he was 11 and 2 with a 1.65. So he was balling with Cleveland. He leveled up and became a deity with Milwaukee for 17 starts. And then he makes the evil empire even stronger when he signed with New York.
Absolutely. CC, one of the great pitchers that I've seen, in my generation, one of my favorite pitchers watching ever. The bravado that he had on the mound, you knew, like, he looked like the ace,
Yeah.
right? When you're giving the guy the ball on opening day or in game seven of the World Series, you want him to look and pitch a lot like CC Sabathia. The one thing I am surprised about, first ballot for CC? I mean, you know, if we're looking at total numbers, right, no one's getting to 300 wins anymore. The certain plateaus that,
Yeah.
come with starting pitchers in this day and age. And he's near the great numbers, and it makes sense that he would be a Hall of Famer. But I was just surprised that he was a first ballot Hall of Famer. I think the big winner outside of the Sabathia family, and of course CC himself, is Zach Greinke, because Zach Greinke's numbers rival CC's and arguably are better. So we should expect Zach Greinke to be a first ballot Hall of Famer.
I think CC's legacy comes into play here, and CC was a winner, and he was obviously a dog in Milwaukee after that deadline. I keep bringing that up because I remember it so vividly. I was like, wow, young Jack is in love with Brewers CC Sabathia. But I mean, the Yankee lore there, I do feel like there were a lot of other things that are playing into CC's candidacy that made him a first ballot Hall of Famer in a similar way to how we view Adam Wainwright when he eventually gets on the ballot. When you look at the standard numbers, I think there are a lot of pitchers that are deserving of a spot in the Hall over Adam Wainwright, but I think Wainwright is going to be considered for a little bit longer than he probably should because he was a Cardinal for that long and his spot in baseball is solidified. We're going to look at Wayno versus Corey Kluber, and it's going to be a little weird because Kluber's not a Hall of Famer, but Wayno might be. But Kluber has a couple of Cy Youngs. Like it is. I don't know. These Hall of Fame processes are just so weighted differently. Like they're just so different when it comes to what people value, and I feel like people valued the Yankee tenure and how good he was when he was so young. CC Sabathia. There were a lot of things working in his favor.
Absolutely. And if we're talking about certain voters weighing things differently and, weighing different pitchers, who's the one idiot who didn't weigh Ichiro Suzuki's standing in his career as Hall of Fame worthy? I mean, what a moron.
Wa- Was it Dan Shaughnessy who only voted for Jeff Kent a couple years ago? We have these guys. They vote for the Hall of Fame. So I understand that we ran into one person who was on this weird pedestal taking a stand against Ichiro, but I thought Ichiro's response was hilarious. Did you see him say to the one voter who didn't check my box, I'd like to have you over for a good chat and we can have a drink or something like that?
Yeah, the exact quote, I have it right here. It was, I would like to invite him over to my house, have a drink together, have a good chat. No, that came from Ichiro's translator. The way I look at Ichiro is like, if we're talking about an entire career, even dating back to his time in Japan, he's one of the greatest baseball players who has ever graced our earth. If we look at his resume in Major League Baseball, he came over at 27 years old and had over 3,000 hits. For all those watching on YouTube, I'm doing the hand gesture. That's it. Hall
Yeah.
of Famer. Like, that's it. He should have your vote as the Hall of Fame, just his Major League Baseball resume. And then if we're looking at his full body of work, I mean, this is arguably one of the greatest bat to ball guys in the history of ever. Maybe the, right? So makes absolutely no sense why it's one moron. But I also don't want that to be the story of Ichiro's candidacy. I don't want us to be like, oh, well, just harping on the fact that one idiot didn't vote for him. Like, let's
I think
celebrate the player that Ichiro is.
I think it is part of the story, and I think the writer that didn't vote for him is accomplishing exactly what they wanted to accomplish. Same with the three guys that didn't vote for Ken Griffey Jr., and same for the one person that didn't vote for Derek Jeter, I think. He missed unanimity by one vote.
One vote.
Unanimity, that's a tough one. But Ichiro, Derek Jeter, Ken Griffey Jr., these are guys who should be unanimous Hall of Famers. And the fact that we have a relief pitcher that is the only unanimous Hall of Famer is kind of weird to me. But yeah, I don't think there's any denying that this guy is one of the greatest to ever play the game of baseball when you account for his career in Japan before his career in the States. And you mentioned debuted at 27 and he wins the MVP right away and he has 3,000 hits when he debuted at 27.
We're talking about CC potentially being the greatest trade deadline acquisition of all time. Do you think Ichiro has a case for the greatest rookie of all time? In 2001, when he comes over, right, with the Mariners, puts up a 7.7 B WAR, steals 56 bases, leads the league in hits with 242, hits 350. It's 350 for an 838 OPS, wins the MVP, wins Rookie of the Year, wins a Gold Glove, wins a Silver Slugger, and of course is an All-Star. I don't have the numbers in front of me of the greatest rookie seasons of all time, but that has to be up there with anybody.
So I'm pulling up Fred Lynn and I'm pulling up Mike Trout. So measure these next to Ichiro.
Okay.
Fred Lynn, his rookie year, won MVP as well. Hit 330 with a 967 OPS, 47 doubles, 21 homers, 105 driven in.
What was
Seven and
his
a half
WAR?
win player.
Seven and a half.
7.4.
Ichiro was 7.7, but
Ichiro is 7.7.
that is still so good though. That's a
Yeah,
good call.
Fred Lynn, and Ichiro, I think the only two guys to ever win Cy Young and Rookie of the Year in the same season. So Fred Lynn, I think Mike Trout is
You
the
mean
answer
MVP?
though.
You mean MVP, not Cy Young?
Yeah,
Yeah.
MVP and Rookie of the Year in the same season. 2012 Mike Trout is probably the right answer. A 10.5 win season. Trout hit 326 with 27 doubles, 30 homers, 49 bags, a 963 OPS.
All right, yeah,
I think
that's
that's the answer. And the
fine.
only
Yeah,
reason he didn't join Fred Lynn and Ichiro is because Miguel Cabrera hit for the Triple Crown that year.
yeah, Dwight Gooden I always go back to as
Yeah,
on
like
the
Doc
pitching
Gooden,
side.
Fernando Valenzuela. You think about the pitchers there.
Yeah, but it was really his second year in '85 with the Mets where he put up a 12.2 WAR season.
That's
So good.
crazy.
Yeah, just unbelievable. Yeah, I think
Absolutely
Mike
nuts.
Trout 2012 might be the greatest rookie of all time, and maybe Ichiro's coming in second. But of course, Mike Trout another first ballot guy.
Yep. I real quick want to talk about Paul Sewald before we get to the second baseman here, because Paul Sewald just signed with the Cleveland Guardians. It's a 1 year deal with a mutual option for 26, guaranteed 7 million, paid out in a $1 million signing bonus, $5 million worth of salary, and a $1 million buyout on a $10 million mutual option. So they are hedging their bets, it seems, Cleveland is, with Paul Sewald, who was disgusting in 23 and gross through the front half of 2024 and then fell off the face of the earth, lost that closer role in Arizona. And then all of a sudden he hits free agency because Arizona doesn't need him with Justin Martinez looking like he's ready for the ninth inning. And then you got, Ginkel and Puck and everybody else in that D-backs bullpen. The corresponding move for signing Sewald to this 1+1 was DFAing Pedro Avila, which is crazy to me. This might be the best player DFA'd in the last couple years.
Pedro Vila can
Wow.
slot into most bullpens, and
In the
like,
seventh inning,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and he was phased out.
Here's the thing, though. It's like when the Guardians signed Sewald, don't you do this kind of with some teams, whether it's fair or not? Haven't the Guardians kind of earned our trust? When they get
Yeah.
Paul Sewald, it's like, oh, they got Paul Sewald versus another team, right? Or
It's
and if they DFA Pedro Vila, I'm kind of thinking to myself, oh, there must be something wrong with him. I
no,
just
no.
fully
It's just
trust the Guardians.
no. There were too many good relievers.
Yeah,
That's the issue that they ran into. It's okay. Who else are we going to even contemplate getting off the roster? Sabrowski, Heron, Walters? Absolutely not.
probably points to their confidence in Sewald, though, and I can understand why. Right in May last year, 1.29 ERA in 7 innings, allowed 1 run. It was great. June, 9 2/3, 0 ERA. July got absolutely demolished. Gave up 12 earned in 10 innings, 10.8 ERA. August wasn't nearly as bad, 4.66, but just didn't have it. And then in his last three appearances, 3 1/3, allowed an earned run, just a really horrible back-to-back 2 months there in July and August, but
Okay.
wasn't as bad as the full season numbers would tell you. And it's still Paul Sewald. Like this guy was
Yeah.
closing games and was legit 2 years ago.
Yeah,
So
I think it's important to note he had 34 saves in 2023 and he had a
yeah,
3.1 ERA and he had a sub 3 in Seattle before the trade. And, he's a guy that will rack up punch outs to, maybe 9.5, 10 Ks per nine. He's not going to walk very many people whatsoever. And he's got this four seam sweeper combination that looks so uncomfortable when it's on. And it was just off for 2 months. And being off for 2 months can tank a season. And when we look at Paul Sewald's 2024 at the end of his career, it's not like we're saying, oh, this was terrible. it was a 4.3 ERA because the front half was so good and he ran into a bad 2 months. But this is a guy before that is coming off of a 3.06 in 2021, a 2.67 in 2022, and a 3.12 in 2023. I mean, the we say the Dodgers are collecting infinity stones when it comes to elite talent. The Guardians are collecting infinity stones when it comes to eighth inning guys.
Yeah, yes, they are. And what I
And
will
they
say is,
have and they have, I think, the best closer in baseball.
yeah, they're probably looking at some underlying numbers with Sewald,
I'm
some
sure.
ERA predictors. I'm sure they're looking at much deeper stuff than that. But just for the surface level for us just to look at, right? Pedro Avila, 3.81 ERA last year with a 4.62 expected, right? Elevated walk rate, 10%. It's not like he's a big strikeout guy. They're probably thinking to themselves, we might have gotten the best of what Pedro Avila is going to give us, right? For another team, Pedro Avila could be solid. And then Paul Sewald, you got an expected ERA at around 3.7, and that's even after a tough season. And really, we're looking at one really bad month and one not so good month.
Yeah.
But if you look at the totality of Sewald's career, he's been a low threes guy, even in a closer's role. So get him with their pitching development, maybe make a couple of tweaks here, and we're right back to being one of the better relievers in the sport for kind of almost nothing. One of those moves that almost didn't make the show, right? When we're talking about our show notes, it's also, oh, we also got to talk about Paul Sewald. Like those
A
are the
little bit.
moves the Guardians keep making is, oh, that guy. And then he turns out to be pretty good for them. And that's why they're perpetually in the running to win the division. And that's why I believe in them, right? So it brings me all the way back to our first point. This is
Yep.
why I continually say, yeah, if the Guardians are investing in Paul Sewald, I'm gonna I'm gonna see why.
They're doing a subdued version of what Atlanta does, where they just put together a 1 through 26 good roster.
Yeah,
Everybody on that team is good.
everyone's
There's
a
no
player.
runts on
Yeah,
that roster. Sometimes there are runts in Tampa. Like I think about Taylor Walls. He's kind of been a runt on that roster. But Atlanta, i i until they ran into this weird corner outfield thing over the last couple of years, Atlanta really never had any bad players on their roster. And I feel like that's the Cleveland conversation now. You know, the Dodgers, I think you can make the argument that they've got some guys that are like not very good, but they're there because of vibe and they're there because of clubhouse presence, yada, yada. Cleveland is as evenly spread out of a team when it comes to their talent across the three phases, whether it's starting pitching, relief pitching, or lineup, as any in baseball, I think.
yeah. You make a good point. Like you look at Cleveland's team and you say, well, where are the runts, right? Where are the guys who you're like, eh? And you could make the
It
argument.
was Rocchio's offensive ability, but all of a sudden Rocchio can hit a little bit.
Was just about to say that Juan Brito, I
Really?
guess, but we also don't know much about him. He's only 23 years old, so he could be a runt. He could not be.
He had 40 doubles in AAA.
There we go. There's no real weaknesses, right? You could look at their team and be like, we're the elite guys outside of Jose Ramirez. That's fine, right? But they made it to the ALCS with that mold, and then they just
Yeah.
continue to repeat it. And that's
Yep.
why they're perpetually competitive without
Yep.
spending a lot of money.
Yep. You want to get into a second baseman?
Let's do it.
Okay, so before we get into the top 10, of course, we have some honorable mentions. We have four of them, and our four honorable mentions are Bryson Stott of the Philadelphia Phillies, a speedster that struggled offensively in 2024. Jonathan India, the newest Kansas City Royal. India gets new life in KC after it seemed like he was destined for a DH role in Cincinnati. It was an even deal. India for Brady Singer. Gleyber Torres of the Detroit Tigers just signed a 1 year deal. This guy's been good offensively, man. He was held to a very high standard in New York, and now we're going to see how he does in maybe the most pitcher friendly ballpark in Major League Baseball. And then off of a fever dream month, Tyler Fitzgerald of the San Francisco Giants. After they sign Adames, he gets to move to second base, and we'll see what he can do in more of a full time role in 2025. So, again, Stott, Torres, India, Tyler Fitzgerald, the four honorable mentions.
Interesting point with the honorable mention. So I agreed with all of them except one, Tyler Fitzgerald. I had Jackson Holiday in there instead.
I
And I
understand.
wanted to ask you the question because it's like, what are we looking at here with both of them? Tyler Fitzgerald, an older player who was incredible for a few months and then kind of fell off a cliff, doesn't really have much of a track record, versus a guy with zero track record. Right? We're talking about Tyler Fitzgerald's fever dream. Jackson Holiday has not even had a fever dream. So why am I ranking Jackson Holiday above Tyler Fitzgerald? It's the offseason and I'm dreaming. right?
Yep.
Like, but we do know that Jackson Holiday was the number one overall prospect in
Yep.
baseball and can be a legit second baseman. And we were even excited about him debuting at 20, think he could make some sort of an impact. He didn't at all. So my question to you is, who has a better 2025, Jackson Holiday or Tyler Fitzgerald?
I would much prefer if Jackson Holiday had a better 2025 season.
Yeah, it just feels better, right?
It
It's
would
like
it
we're
would
getting
just
out
be
in front
better
of
for
it.
baseball. Like
Yeah.
if we're sitting here at the end of the year and it's like, oh, Tyler Fitzgerald ran circles around Jackson Holiday, baseball's in a bad spot. But I think Holiday could very well put up the better season. My problem is you got to see him do it literally once, and
Yeah.
he just didn't do it in the big leagues.
More than fair because I was hoping you wouldn't ask this question. Like, what have you seen from Jackson Holiday to think that he vaults into this conversation?
Nothing.
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 Zero.
At the
It's
major league
just
level, nothing. Like he's walking a lot in Norfolk. Does that count?
nope.
Yeah.
But maybe. That's
He was the top prospect in baseball, man. Like we're talking about Jackson Holiday like he's damaged. He's not damaged goods. He just hasn't done anything yet. When we've seen Tyler Fitzgerald stand on his head and we've seen where the value is.
okay. So put on your prospect hat for a minute, right? Put it on.
Okay, it's on
Jackson Holiday. If I gave you a 100 WRC plus line, higher or lower, where would you go?
higher because he's going to walk.
Okay. And Tyler Fitzgerald?
Probably higher because he has this ability to slug that I think is pretty darn underrated. Now, I'm trying to think about it with slumps included, and I know Fitzgerald's going to slump for a month, but Holiday may slump for 2 months. I have no idea. Holiday's such a young hitter.
Yeah. I think I remember during the season, I was hyping up Tyler Fitzgerald, like in the midst of this
Oh,
awesome
you
run.
loved him. You were all
Loved
about it.
him. I mean, I was watching so many Giants games, and I'm like, this guy gets a hit
Yeah,
every
no,
day.
this is you reversing course right now.
It is. I mean, in June, right, he had 14 at bats. He went 6 for 14, 929 OPS. Then in July, like during the summer months, 1239 OPS.
Yeah.
I mean, he the rest, like he gets really, really hot, then insanely cold, and it's such a small area. But Jackson Holiday has never gotten hot at all.
Yeah,
It's a tough one, but
it is a tough one.
I also will say I'm sure Phillies fans are upset that Bryson Stott didn't make this top 10.
He just didn't hit enough, man. Like
Yeah,
I think any Philly fan will tell you, you got to hit a little bit more than you did in 24. Stott in 23 is totally on this list.
yeah, I agree. But and what I will say is too, the second base position is in a good spot right now. I mean, this is a
Yeah.
good list. It's a
Yeah,
very good list.
I think so. So I this is a list that I greatly enjoyed. Other guys that got top 15 votes that did not make it. McNeil got one top 15 vote. Luis Rengifo was our first one pinched out of the honorable mentions,
Yeah.
which I think is important to
People
note.
were
And
upset that he wasn't in the utility
utility,
rankings. What at least what I think he's going to play second all next year. I think that's
I
what
think
his
so.
spot is going to be. So that's kind of what we thought. Our apologies if he doesn't and he ends up being more of a utility guy. Some
He
of this is guesswork. I almost think thoughts on this. We shouldn't even rank the utility guys next year because we never know who's actually going to be a utility guy, and it's always like, well, if you're a better player, you probably only have one position.
Yeah, it's tough. And with the Renhefo conversation, you're talking about Christian Moore as well. How are they going to treat Christian
Yeah.
Moore? When does he get up? It's reliant on a lot of other factors. But
Hmm.
if we ranked Renhefo in second base and people are saying, "Oh, he should be utility," I hear you, but
Yeah.
it is kind of fun to whip people into a frenzy. So I'm cool just continuing to do it.
So we already whipped everybody into a frenzy so far with just some honorable mentions. We're off to a
Yeah.
great start. But before that, let's take a quick break. All right, top 10 second baseman in Major League Baseball. I am requesting to do the odds
Okay.
because I have a pitch for our number 9 guy that I really, really want to talk about. And I
Okay.
think he is too low. So go ahead with number 10.
Okay, number 10 is Brandon Lau of the Tampa Bay Rays. And I don't really have a pitch for him, to be honest. Brandon Lau is a guy that I was unfortunately the low man on. I had him at 12. Three guys had him at 10. Ryan had him at 9. Leo had him at 8. And again, a reminder we had 6 voters you, me, Aram, and then our 3 editors Ryan Finkelstein, Leo Morgenstern, and Eric Truden. And we ranked 1 through 15. He played 107 games last year. He had 21 homers, a 123 WRC plus. He hit 244, and he had a 2.2 win season. I think the reason that I docked him was because we've seen him struggle to stay on field and struggle to match like that, phenomenal season he had. I want to say in 2022, maybe that was 21 with Lau. I understand the price point. Like I understand why he's a $10.5 million second baseman, and I see the value here. But at a certain point, I look at some other guys and I'm like, okay, you offer something a little bit more dynamic to me than Brandon Lau right now. He's 30 years old. Mentioned 39 homers in 2021, but since then, games played totals 65, 109, 107. You got to stay on the field, man.
Yeah, I totally get where you're coming from that. That's why he comes in at 10 for me, but he couldn't be any lower than that just because of his bat, right? He's a career 126 WRC plus guy coming off a year where he's 123, which means he was 23% better than league average. And you're right, hasn't been able to stay on the field. 107 games, 109 over the last two seasons. Both seasons he had at least 20 home runs. The power is there. He's walking enough to be valuable, even though it kind of dropped off a cliff last year. But this is normally a guy who rocks a walk rate 10% or higher. He does strike out a little bit, but it was lower than the year before. Right, he's going to get on base at a fine clip, but he's really going to slug, right? When you're talking about Tyler Fitzgerald and you see the upside of slugging, and that's why he might have a WRC plus above 100, Brandon Lau is that to the nth degree. So the bat is just too good to rank any lower. And it's
Yeah.
not like he's been so unavailable that his games played read in the double digits. No, last two seasons in the triple digits. I know you wish it was more. I get it. That's why you're a little bit lower. But the bat for me is still too good to rank him any lower.
I understand that. And I was probably too harsh because I want to see him on the field more. And, you mentioned they're both in the triple digits, but they're both under 110. Like he's played just over 100 games in each of the last two seasons. And before that, he played 60 something. So, yeah, we'll see what happens, man. But he's clearly talented. I think this is your classic pick up the club option if you're Tampa. And when he performs, you can move him for a more controllable asset at the deadline. I'd be shocked if he was on the team through the end of the season.
Yeah, I'd be pretty surprised as well because, of course, they're just going to bring up, another guy who's just going to end up being the same guy as him. That's what
Mead.
the Rays
Mead
do.
has been blocked forever,
Yeah.
and this is your opportunity to get Curtis Mead in the lineup.
And I have a baseball card autographed by Curtis Mead. So I would like
Do you?
if he got a little more playing time. Arm told me like 3 years ago, get it on Curtis Mead. And I
Yeah.
got him at a good price. He went up, and I'm talking to Arm, should I sell? He's like, no, this guy's going to be a mainstay. And it's not really Arm's fault. It's just he's just
No,
been blocked. He's
it's
just been
Tampa's fault.
blocked. Yeah, it's Tampa's fault. So let's move to number 9. And before I give you the name, I want everybody listening, including Jack McMullen, my co-host, to everyone close their eyes. Everyone close their eyes while they're listening to this. I want you to picture a 24-year-old. A 24-year-old that at his position finished 4th in WRC plus, 6th in F4, excuse me. So he's 4th in WRC plus, 6th in F4. He had a higher xWOBA, which is looking at your quality of contact, higher xWOBA than Jose Altuve, Luis Arias, and Marcus Semien. He was one of 15 players with at least 22 stolen bases that hit 18 home runs. Again, one of 15 players with at least 22 stolen bases that hit 18 home runs, and he won't turn 25 until May. That sounds like a budding star in our game, correct? So why is he coming in at number 9? And his name is Luis Garcia Jr. of the Washington Nationals. One thing that I think will vault him into the top 5, and I ranked him 6. I was the high guy, I think, of everybody here.
Yeah.
Or actually, I ranked him 7. I wanted to rank him higher. I was trying to push him up because he's so well rounded. 88th percentile of outs above average. He's a good defender over there at second base. Hits for power, 18 home runs. Steals bases, 22 stolen bases. Hits for average. Hits the ball hard. But the one thing that I think, again, will vault him into the top 5 is just plate discipline. He's a young hitter. He's chasing a lot. He's not really walking. But as he continues to develop here, I mean, this is a budding star up the middle. Find me a lot of 24-year-olds who are in the top 12 percentile in outs above average who are 2020 guys at 24. It's hard to find him. But he plays in Washington. Nobody pays a ton of attention to him. His up the middle teammate, CJ Abrams, is a more explosive player.
Yep.
higher on prospect rankings. People are paying more attention to him and just not paying attention to Luis Garcia. He's a great player, and he should be higher here. But people who are making our rankings, I mean, what is Fink smoking putting him at 12? I mean, that's just Mets fan bias. There's no way he's 12. You were at 10. Arm was at 8. You guys at least have him in the top 10. Fink, I got a bone to pick with Fink. What is he doing ranked
I
at 12?
I hear it with Fink though, and I will say, like, do I regret ranking him below Bryson Stott? Not really, because
You
I think
should.
Stott, I think Stott's an elite defender, and I think he can swipe 30 to 40 bags in 2025.
Luis Garcia, borderline elite defender from last year.
I understand what you're saying, but let me point out the downside. You mentioned that he has a plate discipline issue and he's a young hitter.
Yeah.
I think you might be underselling it. This guy
I
does not walk, and he
la
needs
la
to
la
hit.
la 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 la.
He need,
For everyone watching on YouTube, I plugged my ears like a 4-year-old. I was like, la 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 la, can't hear you, can't hear you.
he needs to hit to be valuable. It's the Arise deal, where if Arise hits 250, there's no value here. I understand that he's a good defender, but this guy hit 253 in May, had a 730 OPS. Okay. In June, he hit 237, had a 593 OPS. In July, hit 333 at a 948. In August, hit 341, had a 919. But I'll point you to the home and road as well. And I'm not doing this to say that he loves hitting at home and he can't hit on the road. I'm doing this to show you batting average compared to overall offensive production. At home, 74 games, he hit 329, which is crazy, had a 918 OPS. But then you go on the road, he hit 233 and he had a 600 OPS. That's a 318 point difference in home and road OPS. And that largely stems from a 90-point drop off in batting average. So if this guy is not flirting with 300, he's not going to get on base. And you have to rely on those homers. And the homers are great. He hit 18 of them. Is he going to hit 25? I don't think so. He's
Why
going to
not?
always be in the 15 to 20 range because
I
I
think
don't
you're
think that,
I think
yeah.
you're underselling him. I think that you're looking for areas to knock him down. What I view that as with a
I'm
guy
not.
who
I'm looking at him as fun but volatile.
I don't think he's volatile because it's not like he chases, but he doesn't have a super elevated strikeout rate. He doesn't have you're not looking at some quality of contact numbers where it's like, oh wow, he massively overperformed that.
I
Absolutely not. I could point to the home road splits as saying, all right, he's a super young hitter who's more comfortable hitting at home right now in his career because he's 24.
I don't think you can tell me that a guy is not volatile when he walks at a 5% clip.
I mean, there are guys on this list who also walk at a 5% clip. I mean, let's look at what did Bryson Stott walk at last year? Because if we're talking about volatility with the bat, and we love Bryson Stott's defense so much, Bryson Stott walked 9% of the time. Pretty good.
There's a big difference between 5 and 9. Like he's one of the bottom 10 or 15 in Major League Baseball when it comes to walk rate.
Yeah, but Bryson Stott hasn't put up an OPS above 750 in his career.
Yeah, I understand.
I mean, Luis Garcia is a better hitter at a younger age and
He's
actually had
also
better defensive metrics than Bryson Stott did last year.
he's
Like
also
way
done it
better.
once. Like in 122 games in 2023, he had a 688 OPS.
Well, yeah, because he's 23 years old. They pulled him up really, really early.
Yeah,
Like,
they pulled him up.
This is
He
a guy who
played his
need,
age 20 season in the
yeah,
big leagues in
exactly.
2020.
Yeah, so he's been playing in Major League Baseball. Like if this was a prospect and this was his first season, we'd be gushing over this guy. So I don't think we can dock him for the Nationals pulling him up when he was a teenager.
He is coming off of a career year to this point, the best year of his career. And I think the question that every voter asks themselves is, was this just the beginning of a true breakout, or was this the best season that we've seen from this guy to this point? And he might fall somewhere in between his 23 and his 24.
I'm on the side of this is not going to be a career year for him. The quality of contact numbers look great. Matches up the production, right? 282 batting average, 278 expected batting average. It's still there. The home runs, like I said earlier, talking about ex-Woba, hard hit rates, right? He had a higher hard hit rate last year than Anthony Santander did. Like that's where we're at in terms of hitting the ball hard. 22 for 27 in the stolen base department. Like this guy, while in the 88th percentile of outs above average, this is the beginning of a really, really good player. I think all the numbers that I'm caring about are pointing to that. Yeah, there are some weird split things as a young player, I understand. And maybe he always will be a guy who hits much better, you know, at his home stadium than he does on the road. But when we look at the full season, we're going to look at a guy who is one of the better defenders at that position, one of the better home run threats at that position, one of the few second basemen who's stealing over 20 bases, while being one of the few second basemen who's hitting in the 270 to 280 range. All
Oh,
of those things, right? There are some areas where he's not perfect, but there are a lot of areas for guys on this list where they ain't perfect either. At 24 years old, we should be jumping all over this bandwagon, just like we're probably going to jump all over the Nationals bandwagon when it comes to a win total bet for this podcast.
I think that he is a very valuable piece of that Washington Nationals offense. And he's not one of the first guys that comes to mind when you think about the Nats being the breakout team of 2025. You think about Wood and Cruz and Abrams and Gore and maybe even some other starting pitching before you even get to Luis Garcia. But you should think about Luis Garcia in that crop, just underneath that trio of Wood, Abrams, and Cruz. Um, I just want to see him do it again. Is that fair?
That's fair. I'm expecting him to do it again. That's why I'm the high guy on him.
Understood. And I'm waiting to see him do it again. And that's why I had Stott above him because I feel like the floor is overall higher. But let's get into number eight. And number eight is a platinum glover, Bryce Terang of the Milwaukee Brewers. I had him at six. Eric had him at six. We both live in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. We were the two high guys. Fink had him at seven. Peter had him at nine. Aram had him at nine. Leo had him at 10. Bryce Terang last year was an 87 WRC plus. He was a 2.5 win player. 155 games, hit 254. He was 50 for 56 in the stolen base department. He swiped 50 bags and I think was the best second baseman defensively in the league last year. Andres Jimenez is always going to be there, but I think Terang was right there with him. We talked about this guy coming up with Milwaukee when he was in Nashville. Good shortstop, could be an elite second baseman. And guess what he is? An elite defensive second baseman that needs to hit just enough. The fact that this guy gave you a 2.5 win season at a 665 OPS should be really encouraging because I think the power is going to tick up. I think the stolen bases are not going anywhere. And if this guy has a 700 OPS, we could be looking at a 4.5 win player.
Yeah, my thinking is, are we going to get a 700 OPS?
Maybe not.
Because this guy, there's no impact with the bat. I mean, there
Yep.
just really isn't, right? Quality of contact. I mean, a 29.7% hard hit rate is terrible. Like, he is not hitting the ball hard at all. But again, I don't want to diminish him at all because he's so good in so many other facets of the game. He's one of the best base runners in the league. He's one of the best defensive players in the league. Led Major League Baseball in defensive runs saved last year. Led everybody, right? It was him, Pat Bailey, and Andres Jimenez at the top. Like, this is a premier defender, above elite, right? We're talking about the best defenders in the game, and that's what Bryce Terang showed last year. And when I'm watching him in the playoffs, like I'm always envisioning, he's the perfect nine hitter. I mean, just the perfect nine hitter, right? Can get on base for the leadoff guy, steal second, get him over, starts an inning that way. He's so elite at some facets of the game that the greater baseball audience doesn't really care about, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
That's why his name is not star-studded. But the reason I'm going to bring Luis Garcia into this is he's coming off the best defensive season in Major League Baseball, arguably when it comes to defensive runs saved, and Luis Garcia had a higher WAR than he did. That's kind of where we're at here. Is that yes, he has such a high floor because he's otherworld defensively. Will the bat ever come? Like even average? Like even an average bat, he'd be a Nico Horner level player who's higher on our list. I just don't see that.
Yeah.
Do you see that? I think you're more bullish on the bat than I am. There's stuff in the profile that there's some ground balls that he can beat out, right? But other than that, there's zero power, hits the ball on the ground a little bit too much. I don't know. Like a 53.7% ground ball rate when you aren't hitting the ball hard. Like
Yeah.
there's almost no shot there unless you have elite speed, which he does, and that's why he can get on enough. But
Yeah, so
enough is
I
not good enough for me.
I personally forecast a steady improvement. And by that, I mean in 2023, he hit 218 in 137 games. In 2024, he hit 254 in 155 games. In 2023, he had a 585 OPS. In 24, he had a 665 OPS. So we're talking about a guy that got a lot better. And it was really bad in 23, and then it was just well below average in 24. So I see a guy, and I feel like he's a guy that will continue to tick towards average. I don't think 665, you can just cut and paste his 24 season and plop it in 25 offensively. I'm banking on improvement with this. And I think I'm doing the Jackson Holiday thing that you're doing, where it's like, okay, I haven't seen it yet at the big leagues, but I believe in it. So that's why I deem Terang above a Luis Garcia.
And there's a sliver of me who feels the same as you.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm out here putting a guy with an 80 WRC plus at the top 10. Like
Yeah.
I have it at 9. You were just higher up on the list than I
Yeah.
was, but no, I still have him here too because of how elite he is in a lot of, secondary categories, or at least fans think. And sometimes I do when I'm ranking because I like the bat. I like the bat.
Understood.
And it gets dogged down a little bit when the bat is so bad, but I agree if he can be even a 90 WRC plus. I mean, this is a 3.5 to 4 win player, so I think he can get there. And you and I we don't really have any evidence for that, to be fair to our audience, but we feel it, and I'm willing to stand on it with you. Not as much as you are.
I stand on it. I'm willing to bank on him elevating towards, let's call it, a 700 OPS.
And the next guy on our top 10 second base list is Andres Jimenez, who's kind of cut from the same cloth, new Toronto Blue Jay. And if we're talking about defense, we just talked about Bryce Terang leading all players in defensive runs saved last year. Well, Andres Jimenez came in second with 20 defensive runs saved, but he had 21 outs above average. That led all of Major League Baseball. So by the range metric, nobody was better than Andres Jimenez. I'm going to turn this back on you. Trivia. That'll be fun. Only players to ever have 20 outs above average and 20 defensive runs saved in a season since tracking. So Baseball Savant outs above average started getting tracked in 2016. You don't have to give me the year, but give me some players between 2016 and 2024 who you think were as elite as Andres Jimenez was defensively last year.
By defensive run saved.
Defensive run saved and about outs above average, right? There are only 6 players in that time frame who in one season had 20 outs above average, 20 defensive runs saved.
Kiermaier.
Kiermaier, no.
Wow.
Yeah.
Pilar.
Nope.
Uh,
Great defensive seasons. Like these guys have had like 23 defensive runs saved, 18 outs above average.
yeah.
I'm sure they'd all be close, but they
Yeah.
didn't technically qualify in this not hypothetical, this instance I'm giving you.
Yeah. Did we catch any of Andrelton Simmons or Buster Posey?
2017 Andrelton Simmons, absolutely. Buster Posey, no. Or at
Bang.
least
Simmons.
maybe didn't track him.
I stand by this. I haven't mentioned this in like 2 years on this show. I still go on YouTube when I'm bored on a Tuesday night and I'll watch Andrelton Simmons Gold Glove highlights. Like there's nobody I enjoyed watching play the position more than Andrelton Simmons.
I agree with you. The only guy I watch probably more highlights of, Brandon Crawford.
Crawford, yeah,
Smoothest guy
Crawford's
ever.
nasty. Is Crawford on this list or no?
He's not on this list.
Okay. My next guesses are Arenado and Chapman.
Arenado, yes, in 2019. Matt Chapman, no.
Okay. Can you give me positions?
Yes. So we have another shortstop and we have 3 center fielders. So you got Andrelton Simmons already. You got Nolan Arenado already. You still got 4 more. Just think about a shortstop who's been in Major League Baseball for a while just because of the glove.
Nick Ahmed.
Bang. Nick
Yeah.
Ahmed in 2018.
Yeah.
I'm trying to give you a hint. Who is right? You think about it in Trelton Simmons that's short. Who, when you watch play center field, he's not on the field a lot, but when you watch him play center field, you're like, I mean, isn't that what Andrew Jones was? Isn't that what Willie Mays is? Isn't that the best defensive center field we could possibly see?
So Kiermaier and Pilar are my two answers there, but Jose Siri, is that the answer?
I wish. I wish that was the answer, but it's
he's
not.
he's elite. He's
Oh,
elite in
come
center
on.
field.
You know this guy. You know him.
Um,
Think
man.
about him. Think about a man who in center field, there's a ball in the gap, and nobody looks more like a gazelle than this guy. A cheetah.
Oh, Buxton.
Buxton. I knew you'd get it when
Yeah.
I brought in the
Yeah.
gazelle.
There you go.
Byron Buxton in 2017. Royals legend in 2018.
In 2018, I would have gone with Alex Gordon, but uh 2018 Royals center fielder. Not Locaine.
Locaine.
Locaine. Wow. Okay.
Locaine.
This
Lorenzo
is good,
Cain.
man. You're jogging my
I know.
memory.
And
I
one
love this.
more. One more. Trying to give you a hint. Top prospect. The bat never really came. This is going to
Victor
give it away.
Robles.
Bang. Yeah, I knew it.
Yes.
Yes. Victor Robles in 2019. Funny enough, not since, right? 2019, we never had another
Wow.
year with a guy to
Wow.
do it. But yeah, so Andres Gimenez, as we can tell, based on that exercise, is one of the great defenders in our sport. Not at just second base, is. Thing is, the bat is terrible. And this is a bat that I have wanted to be great. I've wanted to be so great. I've talked about it on the show so many times. 141 WRC plus in 2022. And I'm looking at a guy who can hit 10 to 15 home runs, steal 30 bases, be an unbelievable defender with a 141 WRC plus. So when the Guardians gave him that contract, I thought at the time, great deal. Like I know that there was some quality of contact concerns in those numbers that was pointing to some regression with the bat. And I said, that's okay
Yeah.
because he's going to be such a good defender. Here's the thing, though, Jack. The year after, he was below average offensively. And I said, I can withstand that. I can. A 96 WRC plus, right? We're talking about Bryce Terang getting to that point. If he can do that, we're fine because he's so good at other aspects of the game. And then we get down to the 80s, and then we're like, well, God damn it, we're grasping for straws here. And a lot of the same problems I have with Terang from a quality of contact lens, I have with Andres Gimenez, but Andres Gimenez has shown more seasons now of that limited batted ball quality. So I had trouble ranking him. There's a part of me that still believes
Yeah, of course.
in the bat, but the glove is so good that he just has to be on the top 10 second base list. Like he just has to be because
Yeah.
of the glove. Can he hit is the question.
Yeah, and we're trending closer and closer towards the answer being no.
Mm-hmm.
But after that 22 season, I would have given him $150 million.
Easy.
Oh my, like, dude.
I would have got fired. I would have given him a lot.
Yeah, I'm gonna give you a stupid amount of money.
Yeah.
300, dude, with an 840 OPS. You give me platinum glove level defense and an 840 OPS, I'll pay you whatever you want. I'll do the Blake check from what Duke's got it in semi-pro. You know what I'm talking about? That big check that he just couldn't cash.
And to be fair, also, that was in the midst of 2022 Quantrill, where nobody on the Guardians could do wrong in my eyes.
Yeah,
I would
fair.
give Jose Ramirez 12 billion, give Josh Naylor 40 trillion, give Andres Gimenez, give them everyone all the
All
money
money.
possible.
All of
So
you get
they were
money.
winning every day. It was the best, or at least when Quantrill pitched. So that bias got into my mind about Jimenez. I was so upset when he had the down year, and then he did it again, even worse. And I'm like, crap, I might have gotten this one a little bit wrong. But I don't know what to expect in 2025. Like, will moving stadiums help him? What have we talked about with all these lefties at Progressive Field in Cleveland? We talked about Stephen Kwan. Saw a big uptick in power from the left side.
Yep.
Josh Naylor, big uptick in power. The wind tunnel going out to right field helped a lot of these lefty hitters. Andres Gimenez was worse. Worse with a wind tunnel.
Do you know how many question marks I have about the middle infield for the Toronto Blue Jays this year? I have so many questions.
could be so good. I mean,
Could
think
be
about it.
awesome.
Think
Could
about
be.
think about if Bichette is Bichette levels that we know
And
and
Jimenez
Jimenez
is
is
Jimenez.
2022, or Bichette is getting traded for a top 10 fringe prospect because he continues not hitting at all. And Andres Jimenez is just Nick
Sunk
Ahmed.
cost.
He's just Nick Ahmed.
Yeah. It's crazy, man. And I will say Jimenez and Terang is like it's the Mortal Kombat choose your fighter screen.
Yeah.
They're kind of the same guy to me. And I think I opted for Terang over Jimenez.
I'm perfectly fine with that. I opted for Jimenez over Bryce Terang because Jimenez has just showed it with the glove a little bit longer, which doesn't even make sense now that I'm like saying it out loud. That was in my brain when I was ranking these, but saying it out loud, what do you mean? You watch baseball, Peter? You see that Bryce Terang has the same level of glove that Jimenez has? Why would Terang regress
Yeah.
defensively? He's so
Yeah.
fast, he's so good, he has a good arm. Like, why would he?
Yeah.
So, yeah, saying it out loud, sure, Terang could be better than Jimenez. Like, they're the same thing. Except Terang steals more bases.
Yeah. All right, let's go to number 6 here. Number 6 is Jazz Chisholm, who's back at second base for the New York Yankees. I had him at 7. You, Aram, Leo had him at 6. Ryan had him at 6 as well. Eric was the low man at 8. Jazz Chisholm went from center field to third base after the trade, and now he's going back to second. And what this guy did in 147 games is slash 256, 324, 436 with 24 homers, 40 stolen bases. He was a 4-win player playing a new position in the big leagues for a team that got to the World Series in New York at third base. It is nice that he's going to be back at second. I think he can let the glove eat a little bit more at second base. He's rangy, man, and I'm excited to see him do that at second as opposed to the quick twitch at third. But it was a fun watch in center as he was learning it. You just saw how good of an athlete he was. Jazz, I think, starts this new tier of second baseman where you know you're getting an athlete. The question is, how available are you going to be? And that was the question going into last year. And we'll see what happens in New York in a full season, but that was really encouraging that his game total was in the 140s.
Absolutely, right? You're talking about a guy who's rarely on the field. 2020 shortened season, we'll throw it out the window. That's fine. 2021, he was relatively healthy, 124 games, but again, not a full season. 2022, he only played 60. 2023, he only played 97. Then last year, he played 147. And in 46 of those 147 games, he played with the New York Yankees. And on the Yankees, he was awesome. 11 home runs in 46 games with 18 stolen bases, cut down the strikeout rate, hit 273, slugged 500 for 132 WRC plus. The man put up a 2.3 FWAR in 46 games. And I was happy. I was excited. See him in the playoffs. Then he did absolutely freaking nothing and talked the entire time. So that's why, I sometimes get upset with Judge Chisholm. But looking at him in a vacuum, I mean, this is an explosive talent player. I mean, a 4-win season, that's coming in a lot of different angles. We saw him pick up third base in like 10 minutes. I mean, that just speaks to the type of athlete that Jazz Chisholm is. The Yankees acquired him and they didn't even have a need for second base. They just thought, we need to get him on our team, the athlete that is Jazz Chisholm. Let's put him at third. And he was serviceable over there. Like, that speaks to the level of talent that he has. Hits for a lot of power, steals bags, decent plate discipline. So he is a very, very good player. Very good player all around. There's just the way that he conducts himself pisses me off. But that's okay. I'm not, he's not my cup of tea, which is fine, but he's a fan favorite for a lot of other people who enjoy that stuff. And to them, we just enjoy different things. But Jazz Chisholm, definitely a very good player overall. And I agree with you, starts to separate a different tier because Jazz Chisholm can be a good defender, which is great, but he's also one of the more talented from a offensive side of the ball too, which is hard to get when you're looking at the rest of our list from 7 to 10, except for Luis Garcia, who is firmly in this conversation, but the rest of
Yeah.
just baseball hasn't seen it yet.
I think you give him a little bit too much crap for having fun and talking while he's playing the game.
Yeah, there's having fun, and then there's shit talking when you're doing nothing, and like
I
shit
agree that
talking
he
the
pushes the
Royals
boundaries
after the
a little
fact.
far. He pushes the boundaries pretty darn far.
That's not my cup of tea.
Yeah,
I just don't want that.
fair.
I think that adds undue distractions. I think it gives the other team bulletin board material. I don't think that helps anybody inside the Yankees play better. I think
I
it could just help the other team, which I'm
I
not
think
a
that
fan of.
I think the Twitter's a little crazy.
Yeah,
I think
and yeah, he's
when you talk pushing the boundaries, you look no further than his X account.
yeah, it's just I'm not a fan. But I am a fan of him when he's on the field and he's playing right. Because in those 46 games, like I was incredibly impressed.
I understand.
Incredibly impressed. And I was a hater when he was in Miami. He came over and I was like, oh shit, this guy's good.
I understand. Top five in a moment, but one more quick break.
All right, let's get into the top five. And so the Shredder from MLB Network is so full of shit. It's insane. It's insane. They had Bobby Witt Jr. at 4. Shredder, you got to introduce me to your drug dealer. I mean, what in the fuck are you talking about?
I don't think a computer does drugs. I don't think the shredder is a person. It
It,
sounds like some sort of algorithm that they deploy.
I
And
mean,
I
they got
will
a
say, number five and Bobby Wood Jr., the shredder just does not jive with these guys.
Albies was not on their top 10, and he comes in at number 5 for us because no shit. Every year he's been healthy in Major League Baseball, he's been a 4-win player, except for 2021, 3.7. He hit 30 home runs, stole 20 bases, tons of doubles. Now, last year was not a great year. Why? Fractured his left wrist, and he actually came back as the right-handed hitter. What have we been saying for years on the show? Ozzy Albies should just hit right-handed because against left-handed pitching, the dude is one of the better hitters in Major League Baseball. Against right-handed pitching, it's not as great, right? We're looking at OPS in the high 6s, but against lefties, it's in the 8s and the 9s, right? He came back and he tried it, but he just didn't seem healthy, right? So we're not going to dock him for that. But what I do know when Ozzy Albies is on the field, he is also a very good defender at second base. If we're looking at power hitters at the position, he's top 3. If we're looking at base stealers at the position, he's way up there as well. If we're looking at bat to ball quality, he's got it. But everyone's been knocking Ozzy Albies because he doesn't really walk that much. It's fine, really, in my opinion, because he does so many other great things. One thing I want everybody to notice about Ozzy Albies could have been injury related, wasn't really sure because it was a left wrist thing, has nothing to do with his right arm. He has a terrible arm. Terrible.
That's why he plays second base.
4th percentile in arm strength. Yeah, but then even when you watch it too, like he was bouncing some. And I was like, what's good with you over there? Why are we bouncing balls at second base? So that's something to monitor, I guess. But Ozzy Albies is like, I mean, what are we talking about with him not on the top 10? Top 5.
Yeah.
Top 5. What do you think?
I'm with you. Ozzy Albies, since the start of the 2021 season, is fifth at the position in homers. Semien, Altuve, Lau, Ketel Marte, Albies. When you look at RBIs, too, Ozzy Albies is number two, only behind Semien. He's one of two second basemen in Major League Baseball since the start of 2021 with 300 or more RBIs. Sometimes it's okay to look at the standard antiquated numbers in Major League Baseball to appreciate a guy. And I think that that's what's getting lost with Pete Alonso. And I
Yeah.
think that's what's lost with Ozzy Albies. We can appreciate Ozzy Albies for the homers and the RBIs. It's fine. It's okay. You can do that. It's allowed. And the
Aren't
fact that it, yeah,
I didn't mean to interrupt you, but you're so right. Like, can I, like, 2021 hit 30 jacks and 2023 hit 33 home runs? Like, does
yeah,
anybody care? Does anybody care? I care.
I care. And the thing is, man, like he signed a 7 year, $35 million deal. Do you know how stupid that is? What they have gotten? Like dollars per home run is a great conversion for the Atlanta Braves. This was Brave sorcery for me. Acuna at 8 for 100 was peak Brave sorcery, but Albies at 7 for 35 was secondary Brave sorcery. I just could not believe that they got this guy. And you mentioned the totals, dude: 30 and 106 and 21, 33 and 109 and 23. I, if he stays on the field, man, and if he's healthy, I have zero concerns about Ozzy Albies, and I love his personality too. He's fun on
Yeah,
that Braves team, dude.
freaking shredder, freaking
Shredder,
freaking
silly
dumbass,
goose.
freaking
Sh-
dumbass robot,
Yeah,
just putting out just.
I call him a silly goose, and you call him a dumbass robot.
You know what the shredder's algorithm is great for clickbaiting. Like if they just put in like the amount of the names and how many clicks one guy will get, and it's like, oh, Bobby will get the most amount of clicks if we're at 4 because everybody will be ripping us and we'll get a ton of love on social. Great. We're trying to rank them the way they should be ranked, and Ozzy Albies should be at 5 and not any lower on anybody's list. Now, I could hear an argument between Jazz for 6 or, Nico Horner, because I had Ozzy Albies at number 4, by the way.
I had him at
Um,
4.
yeah, you had him at 4 as well, so I had him even higher than top 5. But I could hear the Nico Horner, I could hear the Jazz Chisholm argument, but anything below that is just you're not watching the games.
Yeah,
Like, yeah, I don't know what else to say. Like, Ozzy Albies is one of the better players. Ozzy
I'm with you.
Albies is great. There's no reason for him to be any lower than 5.
I'm with you. But now we make the case for Nico Horner at 4. Number 4 is the Chicago Cubs second baseman, Nico Horner. I had him at 5. You had him at 5. Ryan had him at 5. Leo, Eric, and Aram had him at 4. He was a 4-win player last year in 151 games. And what you didn't get from Dansby Swanson, you got from Nico Horner last year. And they're different offensive skill sets, but you're banking on the best up the middle tandem defensively in Major League Baseball. And that's exactly what they were, man. Horner, on top of that, hit 273, swiped 31 bags, had a 103 WRC plus. All I need is slightly above average, and that's what he was. He was 3% better than the league average hitter, and he was a 4-win player. We talked about Terang and Jimenez being the class of the position defensively, and I think Stott is in that clumping too. Horner has to be in that clumping.
Horner is Andres Jimenez or Bryce Terang if they just hit a little bit more.
Yeah.
Right? When we're talking about getting up to an average WRC plus, getting up to these, offensive numbers, then you'd be a 4-win player. Can you be Nico Horner? is what we're talking about here. Because Nico Horner steals a ton of bases. Nico Horner is great defensively, but Nico Horner is an average hitter. And that's why he's extremely valuable because he does all the little things at such a high level. And we're not just saying at a high level for the position, at a high level in the game.
Yeah.
So when you could just be an average offensive piece, which he has been now for a little while, right? We're not talking about a ton, right? We're not asking these guys to be crazy. But if he has a 106 WRC plus, 103, 104, 108, 106, that's over his last 4 years, he's going to be a 4-win player every year. And think about it. When we do the contract stuff, like, is it worth it from a WAR perspective? Because you pay about $8 million per win. It's been worth like $32 million for 4 straight years.
Yeah.
That's extremely valuable. And he'd be a welcome addition to any team. Like, I'd love the Yankees to trade for him. Love
Yeah,
that.
but I think at that price point, it doesn't make any sense for the Cubs to move him, and they have now structured their roster to keep him around for a long time.
And they should. I think it's a good idea too. One thing that I know what your answer is going to be. I know what my answer is going to be, but it did come up, and I was getting a lot of questions about it, so I thought we'd just answer it now. The Cubs signing John Birdie for $2 million. It's not going to impact Nico Horner's whether he
No,
gets traded or not. That
no,
that was it was okay. That was some people were asking questions like, "Oh, is that
no.
a Nico Horner move?" No. Go ahead.
Birdie is a bench bat that is a
Yeah.
safety net for Matt Shaw at third
Yes.
base.
Exactly. That's what it was, and I love the deal at 2 million. And people are
I
like,
thought it was awesome at $2 million.
someone said, you're surprised that he got that much, and I said I would have given him 3. I mean, think about it. We're all different scales. They got a 33% discount of what I would give them.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine a 300 million guy being worth 200 million. It's just
Yeah,
different scales. Absolute
totally.
steal by the Cubs there.
I'm with you.
Yeah. They played 66 cents on the dollar. I'll take that.
Sure.
But Nico Horner, again, it's the very similar pitch to Andres Jimenez and Bryce Terang. Great
Yeah.
on the base pass. Great defender. Solid all around ball player. But he's a much better hitter than Andres Jimenez and Bryce Terang were, which is why he's number 4. That's how good the glove is.
Much better as league average. Think about that.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
it is.
Yep.
But he's even slightly above. I mean, he's been above 100 WRC plus for 4 straight years. We take
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Unparalleled consistency, too.
I
4
hear you.
wins, 107 every year. We'll take it.
Sure. You know what you're getting, man.
All right, so we get into the big boys. The big boys. At number 3, Marcus Semien of the Texas Rangers. Over the last 2 seasons, 10.4 F WAR. That is second only to Ketel Marte among all second basemen. Are we getting odd year Semien? 2019, 6.5 win season, 138 WRC plus. 2020, even though it was shortened, wasn't great for him. 93 WRC plus, 0.3 F4. 2021, back to a 6 win player. 2022, down to a 4 win player to 107 WRC plus. 2023, back to a 6 win player, 126. 2024, back down to 100 at a 4.2 F4. But what I will say is, even in his down years, he's a 4 win player. That's how good he is, right? One thing that I did notice that was out of the norm for Marcus Semien, because at this point, like, what kind of adjustments are these guys making? I don't really know. They are who they are, right? To tell you who Marcus Semien is, he's a guy who can hit 45 home runs, which he did just a few years ago. He's a guy who can steal bases. He's a guy who's always one of the better defenders at the position. A former shortstop goes over to second, becomes an elite defender. We've seen the story before. That's what Marcus Semien is. We know he's as solid as they come. Always been a positive bat against sliders. Last year, he was dreadful against them. Just something I noticed. Is he going to make the adjustment again? I don't know. He's like in his 30s. I'm sure he knows what he has to do. But I will say, for a guy who is so consistent, I know it's been an odd year, but still 4 win player, that's something that felt out of the norm for him.
Yeah, I apologize for not clumping Semien in when I'm talking about the elite defensive second baseman. Like
Yeah,
Semien's there with
definitely.
Horner, with Terang, with Jimenez, with Stott. Marcus Semien is there, and Semien started as a guy that I think when he was either in Chicago or beginning of his time in Oakland, led Major League Baseball in errors committed one year, maybe a couple of years. Like it was a shortstop scenario that it was the first take this shortstop, put him at second base. He's going to level up defensively, and that's what he did, man. And he had that coming out party in Toronto that he got that huge deal with Texas. And since he's been a Texas Ranger, this guy is always in the top three. The question is just: is he one? Is he two? Is he three? And going into 25, he falls at three because of some of those deficiencies that you laid out. And we're talking about a future Hall of Famer and the clear cut best second baseman in the sport ahead of him. So I do think that it's a similar conversation to the first base conversation where we're talking about Harper, Freeman, and Vladdy in their own stratosphere. Like they are leagues beyond four. And I think that's where we're at, man. Horner's great. Albies is great. They're not Semi and Altuve, Ketel Marte. No
It's not
chance.
it's not these three. And I could totally understand someone being like, "Yeah, he is better than Altuve."
I get it.
I could get that. He's a better
Yeah.
defender than Altuve is,
He plays all the time.
but I'm sure you're going to say why Altuve is number 2. So why don't you just get into it?
I
I mean,
am.
the
So,
bat.
yeah. Number two on our list is Jose Altuve of the Houston Astros. He's here because he's a Hall of Famer, and he might be a first ballot Hall of Famer. Jose Altuve had a 790 OPS in 2024 when he was playing in his age 34 season. Peter, when was the last time Jose Altuve had an OPS in a full season under 800?
Oh, under 800? I'm gonna guess like 2013.
2013 when he was
No way.
23 years old. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I was like at the way beginning part of his career.
Yeah. First full season was his age 22 season in 2012. He had a 740 OPS, was an all-star. 2013 at a 678. Since then, 830, 812, 928, 957, 837, 903, 839, 921, 915, and now 790. It's not like he missed it by much. Um, Here's another one for you. Jose Altuve struck out 119 times in 2024. When was the last time he struck out more than 100 times in a season?
2013?
He hasn't done it.
Oh, there we go.
It was the
I like
first
it.
time in his career. Altuve is 34 years old and he's still swiping 22 bags and hitting 20 homers. Is he getting older? Sure. Can he play second base for the Houston Astros as long as he freaking wants? Yes. And is he still giving you a silver slugger season and an all-star season and MVP votes and an OPS flirting with 800? Yes. it would be uh I don't think it'd be right to put Semien over Altuve at this point.
I don't think so either. And you could say, Jose Altuve, as he continues to age, right? Because he is going to be 35 years old, right? He turns 35 in May.
Yeah.
And you look at some of the quality of contact stuff, right? You look at the WOBA minus X WOBA scale. Is he getting the most, out of the batted ball quality? No, but he's also never done that ever in his career. Jose Altuve is a player who's gotten the most out of the batted ball quality, and that's just been who he is, right to this day. You can almost equate that to who he is like as an overall player, right? As a 5'6" guy. And I'm sure if you actually measured him, would he actually be 5'6", or is that his listed height? He's been a player to get the most out of his skill set,
Yeah.
even looking at the numbers his entire career. So
Yeah.
I'm not going to look at a bad ex Woba compared to his Woba and say, now he's on the out and out. No, that's been his MO his entire career.
Yeah.
And the bat was still really good last year. Still 127 WRC plus in a perceived down year for him, 3.9 F WAR. I mean, I'm looking at the last time he had a WAR below that wasn't 2020 was 2013. Like, this guy has been the model of consistency, and the bat is just still too good for me to rank him any lower. I could hear an argument for Semien just because I have so much respect for Marcus Semien,
Sure.
multiple 6-win seasons, but Altuve just still has to be number two for me, and
Yeah,
you
I
as
think
well, and
so.
all of us.
I think so as well. And we're projecting for 25, but like I'm not making this a lifetime achievement award, but I also kind of am at the same time.
But also, like, we are making it a lifetime achievement award, but at the same time, I expect him to be the second best second baseman in baseball next year.
Yeah.
Like, it's
Yeah.
not, I'm not just doing it because of the long track record. Marcus Semien has a really long track record, right? But
Yeah.
you're still ranking Altuve more.
Because he's got a longer and better one.
But also, I think Altuve could still have a 5-win season next
Yeah.
year. Like, I assume Semien's going to be in that same boat too. But I have more faith in Altuve's bat for sure.
Yep.
So to hang on Semien's glove and then let's hope he hits again, I'd rather just bank on the bat and Altuve.
Yep. But none of the six voters had him in the top spot.
No, the top spot, the best second baseman in Major League Baseball, Ketel Marte. So Ketel Marte is a freak of freaks. He hits the ball so goddamn hard, 53.8% hard hit rate. That was higher than Marcell Ozuna, Yordan Alvarez, Corey Seager, and Rafael Devers. That's how hard he hits the ball. 10th highest in Major League Baseball last year. His playoff slash line, which I think is important here, 344, 385, 589 for a 974 OPS in 21 games. Now, you may listen to that and say, well, he's kind of a prior year's playoff merchant. You could say that. But in the 4 games he played in the 2017 playoffs, he went 7 for 17 with a 1235 OPS. So in all the other games, he was elite when the lights were on. Last 2 seasons, he's number one in home runs at the position. And that's when you include Mookie Betts. Include Mookie Betts, sure. Ketel Marte has more home runs in that span. 10.6 F4, like I said, leads the position. And he's just coming off an awesome year. 292, 372, 560. Played 136 games. Hit 36 home runs. A 151 WRC plus. He was 51% better than the league average hitter. 6.3 F4. And now, the only thing I could think about when it comes to Ketel Marte outside of the playoff stuff is I remember when I think I did the first edition of my top 100 and we were ranking second baseman. And do you remember
Yeah.
when I was like, Ketel Marte has to be so high? And you and Arm gave me a bunch of shit because he was just never on the field.
He wasn't.
He was never on the field. And you're like, how can you rank him this high when I'm someone who cares about being on the field?
Yeah.
why are you so high on Ketel Marte? I was like, I think he's the most talented second baseman I've ever watched. Like
Yeah.
Robinson, Cano, Altuve, these guys are phenomenal second basemen, but like just in terms of freak talent, like to
Yeah.
hit the ball as hard as he does, as fast as he can, the ability to go play center field on a dime. I was like, I don't know if I've ever seen a freakier second baseman. And
Yeah.
then
So
he's just been healthy and he's just showing it in droves.
right. So my thought on Ketel Marte is like no second baseman is supposed to look like that when it comes to offensive metrics. You mentioned he had a higher hard hit rate, which is just percentage of batted balls at 95 plus. It's not like, the EVs are always up there with Yordan Alvarez or Devers, but they're pretty darn close. And he's getting to the barrel. He's getting to 95 plus more often than Yordan Alvarez. So
54%
yeah,
of his batted balls are 95 miles an hour or higher coming
like
off the bat.
we're talking about an offensive output that should not happen from a
Yeah.
second baseman and a toolbox that should not be given to a second baseman. Like it should be a twitchy shortstop that,
Yeah.
like can't do it sometimes and it's a frustrating watch defensively, but we're seeing this at second base, man. Um, I have as much fun watching Ketel Marte as I do Altuve. And both of them clear Semien for me. Semien is best enjoyed over 162.
Mhm.
Ketel Marte is best enjoyed over 9 innings because he's going to give you something freaking awesome
Yeah.
every night.
Yeah. Switch hitter too. Like can hit both righties and lefties. Arguably better from the right side. Like
Billy, he's just, you know what? He's that guy when you start naming off your favorite players to watch in Major League Baseball. Nobody's first to name Ketel Marte, but then somebody says, "What about Marte?" And you're like, "Yeah,
wait, yeah,
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 him
he's
too.
way up there.
You're
Yeah.
right."
Because I think when we're talking about the D-backs
Yeah,
and how offensively gifted this team is, our eyes kind of just go to Corbin Carroll, don't they?
yeah.
Corbin Carroll was the number one prospect, rookie of the year,
He's the
unbelievable
face of the
season.
Diamondbacks.
He's the face
Carroll
of the
is the
Diamondbacks.
face of the Diamondbacks, and I think in 25 we're going to look at Corbin Burns and like I think about Gallen too because he's a frontline
Exactly.
starter. It's like you view those guys as the faces of the Diamondbacks, but you forget that the best second baseman in baseball is living there.
But like they have a top 20 player in Ketel Marte,
Yeah,
who's just a freak show. I mean, he's like a shorter Ellie. He's a freak.
he
He's a
doesn't swipe the
freak.
bags. Ellie can swipe 80 bags. Ketel Marte's career high in stolen bases is 10.
Yeah, he's got it though. He should steal more. He should. He could get crazy numbers if he wanted to because he's still fast. He's just so strong. He's so built. But yeah, that's our top 10 rankings. And just to redo it again, at number 10, Brandon Lau of the Tampa Bay Rays. At number 9, Luis Garcia of the Washington Nationals, but should be higher. We all know that. Bryce Terang of the Milwaukee Brewers. At number 8, 7, Andres Jimenez of the Blue Jays. 6, Jazz Chisholm of the Yankees. 5, Ozzy Albies of the Braves. 4, Nico Horner of the Cubs. 3, Marcus Semien Rangers. Jose Altuve at number 2 for the Astros. And of course, number 1, Ketel Marte. Jack, I do have a
Last,
last word.
yeah, I do too. But last word before the last word, Jurickson Profar just signed with the Atlanta Braves.
No way. Good for the Braves. Finally, they did something to add to that outfield. Did it have to be Profar? Sure. I mean, I know Braves fans, or at least those on social media that I've seen, did want Profar. They're excited for that addition. So, good for them. I just wish they were operating in a larger market, but he fills a role.
He fills a role. He had a heck of a year in 2024, and that takes that corner outfield runt that I was talking about when we were talking about Cleveland and Atlanta. That shores that up a little bit. So I do like the fit of Profar in Atlanta because you get a player that was very good last year in the place of Jared Kelnick, and you should feel a lot better about that.
Well, probably he's got to be replacing Brian De La Cruz, right? I mean, that's
Well,
their
yeah,
corner
to
outfield
open the season,
situation.
but Acuna was going to replace
True.
Brian De La Cruz when he was healthy. So you look at a healthy outfield, probably around the All Star break or
Yeah.
maybe a little bit before of Profar in left, Michael Harris in center, Acuna in right. With that infield,
We're cooking. We're cooking.
yeah, you're cooking with gas. And people are like, I saw people shitting on the Braves because they haven't done anything this offseason. What did they need to do this offseason?
Yeah, I've been kind of one of those.
What did they
Not
need to do?
shitting on them, disappointed. I mean, I've been disappointed, right? We're seeing the Mets sign Juan Soto. We're even seeing the Phillies trade for Jesus Luzardo. I
Yeah,
just
but like,
wish the
what?
Braves were,
Where was the deficiency?
I mean, they're the back of the rotation. And I would like to see them add some more bullpen help, right? They lost AJ Minter. Joe Jimenez is hurt. Russell Iglesias is great, but he is older. Like, I would have liked them to add some more bullpen pieces. I would have liked them to get a really good corner outfielder. And I would have liked them to get a good 4 or 5 starter. They didn't address any of that on the pitching side. They haven't addressed any of that on the bullpen side. And then they signed Jurickson Profar. I'm trying to have them compete with the Dodgers here, right? We're holding them to a different standard. You're right. Competing with the rest of Major League Baseball. If they did nothing, they're a top 7 team at minimum. But how are we competing with the Dodgers? How are we taking away the division from the Phillies?
Yeah.
That's where I would have liked to see them be more aggressive.
Yeah.
But
I'm,
I,
I'm
I see what you're saying in a vacuum. Like, compared to the other teams, yeah, they didn't really have
right.
to do anything. But I'm not comparing them to the other teams. I'm comparing
Right.
them to the best teams where they
Right.
should be.
And the bench sucks. I would
Yeah,
say
it
that the bench
sucks.
is really not good, and they could use another starter. I know they had plans, and this was. I mean, they were vocal about stretching Grant Holmes out to be a starter. I think they wanted him to be a big league starter, so I understand that. But it's Sale, Raylo, Schwellenbach, Holmes, and the time buyer right now is Ian Anderson. Like, why didn't a 1 year deal for Bueller make any sense? I feel like a 1 year deal would have made some sense for a starting pitcher and then see who gets phased out when Strider comes back. But
There are
we'll
also,
see.
to be fair to the Braves, there are still pitchers out there. I mean, could they sign Nick Pivetta?
Yeah, totally to a 1 year deal, and that makes me feel decent.
Yeah, exactly. So
Yeah,
it's not done yet. But again, I've been one of the people kind of vocal about them
yeah,
not doing enough. I mean, they're still
yeah.
great, but
But Profar, I like the fit, man. What's your last word, or do you want me to go first?
well, should we decide a certain bet before we get to the last word?
Oh, what do
Oh,
I have to do?
what do you have to do? So Jack McMullen, per the rules of the bet, Roki Sasaki did sign with the Los Angeles Dodgers.
Yeah.
You are going to have to, the most liked comment, I'm looking at it right now, you have to work me into one of your broadcasts next year,
Okay.
complimenting me on my ball knowledge. Like, you have
Okay.
to figure out a way to work that into a broadcast.
That's
And
fine.
people were giving me harder, um like, if Roki Sasaki went to the Padres, they were
Yeah.
giving me worse things to do, which I asked people to do.
Yeah.
Like, my if Roki Sasaki had signed with the Padres, I would have had to run a mile in Crocs with rocks in the Crocs
That sucks.
and like live stream it. Like, that would have sucked.
Yeah.
And yours, people are like, "Oh, is that too easy for Jack?" And I kind of said, "Do you know how weird that is? That he like that he has to work his co-host and not saying, 'Oh, Peter said this about a player.' It's like you have to then just compliment me in the middle
Yeah.
of like the 5th inning for no
Yeah.
reason."
No, that'll be fun. I'll do
That'll
it.
be fun. All right.
Yeah, I'm in. Um, okay, my last word, real quick.
Okay.
I'm not watching Severance in real time on
Mm,
Apple TV. I'm gonna let season two finish so then I can binge it. But I opted for a rewatch of season one,
okay.
and I forgot how good of television that is. That's just the fucking best television I've seen in a long time.
Yeah.
Ben Stiller knows what he's doing, man.
Yeah, it's a good show. It's a
It's a
really
really good show. Like
yeah.
I'm 2 episodes into the rewatch, and I'm like, I forgot how much I loved this.
Yeah.
Like there are
Really.
very few shows that make me feel like that. The Bear made me feel like that, especially season two and season three. Season one was just a little chaotic for me, but like the Forks episode of The Bear and then the Fishes episode of The Bear, I was like, this is just amazing TV. And Severance makes me feel the same way. Stranger Things made me feel that way too. It's like this is just awesome. I love it.
So funny you brought up Stranger Things. That's a new rewatch I'm doing.
Yeah,
And
dude,
it's
it's
great.
it's phenomenal.
It's a really good show. Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. Severance is a show that loves season one. The problem is some of these shows, like, you watch a great season and it's like, well, we're back in 4 years. It's
Yeah,
like, okay. And I
yeah,
just completely forgot about the show. But now
yeah,
that it's back, I haven't watched that first episode yet. I kind of agree with you. I'd like to watch it all or let it all go and
yeah,
then watch it so I can binge it. But
yeah.
yeah, so my last word is kind of funny. So I gave you a last word on Wednesday's episode where to mess with your perception of time, right? We
Right.
talked about the guillotine still being sanctioned in France the same year that Star
Star Wars
Wars
debut.
debuted in 1977. For anybody who missed that one, I have another one for you. Trains were invented before the bicycle. Think about that one for a second.
What?
Trains were invented before the bicycle was invented.
Why? How?
The
When?
the
Who? What?
first the first steam train was built in 1804. The first bicycle was invented in 1817. You looking it up right now? Yeah,
Yeah,
look it
when
up.
was the
Isn't that
bicycle invented?
crazy?
I don't believe you.
I didn't believe it either. I had to look it up.
Yeah, the first bicycle was invented in 1817 by German Baron Karl von Drais.
Look up when the
What?
first train was invented.
It took. Oh, by the way, the bicycle was invented in 1817. A bicycle with pedals was invented in 1863. So they were
Way
just popping
farther.
around for the first
Yes.
50 years.
So, okay. So you're saying the first pedaled bicycle in
Yeah,
1863?
bike with pedals was in 1863.
The first car was invented in 1886. 17 years later, Orville and Wilbur Wright
Yeah,
invented the plane. So just 17 years after Carl Benz invented the car, we had a plane. That's wild to me. That in a CC Sabathia career, we went from a car to a plane.
that is kind of crazy. I'm also thinking what was the use of the wheel before 1804? Because the train used the wheel, and then people were like, "Oh shit, what if I can do it with two?" And then that happened.
Wait a minute.
Um,
When
I mean,
was
obviously you've got like horse-drawn carriage and everything like that, like the wagon. The wagon's been around forever.
Oh, so that made me think about something. So the unicycle was invented in 1869. I wanted to see if
Yeah, so I assumed
you're
the
saying the
bike
first,
came before the unicycle.
but out of for whatever reason, like a one wheel gave me the idea of a unicycle. Like, what if the unicycle was invented first, and they're
Yeah,
like,
and then
let's
it's like,
add
oh shit,
another
we
one,
need two. We need two.
and then four, and then let's make it fly,
So my
all in
thing
a
is like,
century.
my thing is the wheel was invented in 4000 BC. It took us that long to figure out two of them could help us out.
No, but we went from the
No, we
wheel.
were on the wagon. You're right. You're
Yeah,
right.
no, we went from the wheel straight to the train, and then we're like, wait, fuck, what about a bicycle?
When was the wagon invented? More than 5,000 years ago. Okay, so people figured out the wagon. It was like, word, we can carry people in this.
Tell me
But
what
then
that.
they were
No, go
like,
ahead.
what if we can power it ourselves instead of
Yeah.
relying on a horse?
And then let's just skip all the way to having it fly.
Yeah, sure.
Isn't that crazy though?
That is wild.
Trains were invented before bicycles. That's something to say at the water cooler in the morning.
Oh, no
Just
doubt.
throw off one of your coworkers. So hopefully everybody enjoyed this edition of the Just Baseball Show. Jack, it's hard to believe 824 episodes.
Yeah, dude. 822, way too many.
Yeah, way too many. So for everybody listening, if you've been along for the ride, the best way to support, again, rate and review on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, leaving a 5-star review. As always, leaving a written review as well. And on YouTube, hitting that subscribe button, liking this video, commenting anything down below. Let us know again what you think of the last word segment. Also, I will shameless plug, go get some of this new merch that we got
Hmm.
on the merch store. I mean, the hoodies are awesome. Mine's in the mail. It's coming. We got the World Series logos on the back. They're awesome. Go check that out at our merch store. Of course, we'll be back next week. Same time, same place, Monday, Wednesday, Friday for Jack McMullen. I'm Peter Apple. Have a great weekend. And with that, thank you, everybody.